of President Obama skeet shooting at Camp David. He says he respects hunting.
Well, I made the same thing during the campaign when he said to people, I will not take away your rifle, shotgun, handgun. They leafleted the country with flyers like this: Obama's not going to take your gun. Obama will protect gun rights. And now he's trying to take away all three. I mean,
he's not taking away shotguns.
Have you looked at the Feinstein bill that he's supporting? I mean, that's exactly what it does. I mean, I think what they'll do is they'll turn this universal check on the law-abiding into a universal registry of law-abiding people, and law-abiding people don't want that. I mean, my God, that's the last thing they want.
They absolutely do not. I mean, forgive me, sir, but you take something that is here and you say it's going to go all the way over there. There's no indication. I mean, I can understand you're saying that's the threat, but there's nothing that anyone in the administration has said that indicates they're going to have a universal registry.
And Obamacare wasn't a tax until they needed it to be a tax,
well, it was the Supreme Court that said that.
I don't think you can trust these. I mean, my gosh, Dianne Feinstein said if we could go door to door and pick them all up, I'd do it. Can I talk about what would work for just 1 second?
I want to ask you a couple of questions, and then we'll get to it. Forgive me, sir, I'm going to conduct the interview.
No.
The murder today, because one of the things that concerns people, it seems every day we talk about a shooting, oftentimes mass shootings,
right?
Day after day after day, and the frustration is you don't think that limiting guns has anything to do with that. I understand there's some things you think do work, and we will talk about that. The murder yesterday of former Navy SEAL Chris Kyle. This was the man who wrote American Sniper. This is the man credited with the largest number of confirmed kills of any American soldier ever. He and another man gunned down at a Texas gun range.
If you want to stop violence in this country, here's what you do, okay? First, if you want to protect our kids, you put armed security in schools. I'm not talking about arming teachers. I'm talking about police officers, and I'm talking about certified professional security people. There's not a parent that sends off their kid to school that wants those kids to be unprotected. Just in Atlanta this past week, armed security stopped a shooting in an Atlanta school. Stopped it, right? Stopped it.
But here's the problem. But here's the problem with that, respectfully, sir. If you arm people at schools, a lot of these people aren't just motivated to kill people in schools. They want to kill people. And, forgive me, and if school is too tough, they'll go to a movie theater like James Holmes went. They'll go to a shopping center. They'll go to a gun range and kill Chris Kyle.
So let's talk about the rest of it. You fix the mental health system. Every police officer knows people on the street that should be institutionalized because we've emptied or institutionalized. They're out there walking around in the street. We need to change our civil commitment laws. We need to change the mental health system, fund it, make it work, get these people, interdict them, and get them into treatment. We're not doing that. I still would like to see the mental health records computerized, but we can't even get that done. I've got a transcript here with Senator Schumer from 20 years ago on Face the Nation, where I begged him to help us do it, and they still haven't done it. And the NRA's been fighting to get it done.
All right, you oppose gun control as a form of government tyranny. But in the Senate hearing this week, you offered a different reason for it. Let's take a look.
Right.
What people all over the country fear today is being abandoned by their government. If a tornado hits, if a hurricane hits, if a riot occurs, that they're going to be out there alone, and the only way they're going to protect themselves in the cold, in the dark, when they're vulnerable, is with a firearm.
Do you really think that that is a more serious threat, marauding bands of Americans during a tornado or a hurricane? Do you think that's a more serious threat to the average American than the steady drumbeat of gun violence and sometimes mass gun violence?
We want to stop gun violence. That's what we're trying to do. So here's the threat. There are 25 violent crimes a week in this country. We need to take a city like Chicago, and nobody wants to do it, but the American public, I think, will get it when I say it. Chicago's 89 of 90 in the country in terms of enforcing the reasonable federal gun laws NRA supports on the books against felons with guns, drug dealers with guns, gangs with guns, the people doing the killing. We're all obsessed with the Taliban, and we ought to be. What about these gangs that are ruining neighborhoods all over the country? We need a federal task force, if it takes 500 agents, if it takes 1,000 agents, go into Chicago. I know Eric Holder doesn't want to do it. He says it's a cookie-cutter approach. I know Rahm Emanuel doesn't want to do it. He sent people up on the Hill when the Clinton administration was there saying they're guppies and they can't be concerned with drug dealers with guns. Every gang member on the street of Chicago starting tomorrow morning, let's pick them up. We got a federal law to get them off the street and put them in prison, and that would cut crime, and we're not doing it.
Well, that's a perfectly legitimate point. It wouldn't have saved the people in Newtown. It wouldn't have saved the people in Aurora, Colorado. It wouldn't have saved the people in Clackamas County, Oregon. I want to talk to you about this whole question of rights. The Heller case is the case, the big victory for the NRA, in which the court affirmed the Second Amendment means what it says. But here's what Justice Scalia wrote in the majority opinion. Let's put it up on the screen. The Second Amendment conferred an individual right to keep and bear arms. Of course, the right was not unlimited. Not unlimited. Scalia talks in his majority decision about what kinds of weapons people can buy, who can buy them, where they can be carried. The right is not unlimited, Mr. LaPierre.
And we have all kinds of reasonable laws right here. The NRA supports it. If they enforce them in Chicago, it'd cut crime. But for the most basic right is to protect yourself. And the American public wants to be able, semi-automatic technology has been around for 100 years. If you limit the American public's access to semi-automatic technology, you limit their ability to survive. If someone's invading your house, I mean, you shouldn't say you should only have 5 or 6 shots. You ought to have what you need to protect yourself, a woman should, not what some politician thinks is reasonable.
A couple of weeks ago, the NRA started running an ad that created a great deal of controversy. Here's a clip.
Are the president's kids more important than yours? Then why is he skeptical about putting armed security in our schools when his kids are protected by armed guards at their school?
Mr. LaPierre, do you regret putting up that ad?
The point of that ad was this. It wasn't picking on the president's kids. The president's
it mentions them.
The president's kids are safe, and we're all thankful for it. The point of that
ad... They also face a threat that most children do not face.
Tell that to the people in Newtown. Tell that to the people.
Do you really think that the president's children are the same kind of target as every school child in America?
I think
that's ridiculous, and you know it, sir.
You know, unfortunately, I think there are parents all over the school that think, all over the country, that think their kids are entitled to the same amount of protection when they go to school, and they want their kids to be safe. So they should have
Secret Service?
No, but what they should have is police officers or certified armed security in those schools to keep people safe. If something happens, the police time is, despite all their good intentions, is 15 to 20 minutes. It's too long. It's not going to help those kids. Certified armed security in schools, just like happened.
But that isn't going to protect them in the shopping mall, in the movie theater, on the street.
I mean, which is why we need to do everything else I'm talking about. Let's enforce the federal gun laws, which we do not do now, against gangs with guns, felons with guns. My gosh, in the shadow of where we're sitting right now, gangs are out there in Washington, D.C. You can buy drugs, you can buy guns. They are trafficking in 13-year-old girls.
I understand there are lots of problems out there, and this isn't going to solve all of them.
Our government is letting them...
But you can't say that, first of all, the gangs don't commit the mass murders. Adam Lanza wasn't a member of a gang. James Holmes was not a member of a gang. One of the points of that ad that I want to ask you about is you made it a class argument. The rich, the elite,
sure,
they have bodyguards. Sure. They have security.
Sure, and Mayor Bloomberg has it. Mayor Bloomberg has bodyguards.
I'll tell you, somebody else who has security. You do.
Sometimes we've had there's a
on Capitol Hill you had security.
You talk about
today you have security.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about hypocrisy right on the open. We've had all kinds of threats come.
Does that make you an elite, an out-of-touch elite, because you have security?
I don't deny anybody the right to security when they need it. What I'm saying is, it is ridiculous, Chris, for all the elites and all the powerful and privileged, the titans of industry, to send their kids to schools where there's armed security, to have access to semi-automatic technology, to have access to
First of all, I don't know
magazines.
anybody who has I don't know anybody elites who send their kids. My children went to the same school that the Obama children went to many years ago. There were no armed security there.
A third of the schools in the country already have armed security.
I understand that, but this idea of an elite class is just nonsense.
Capitol Hill right now, they're all protected by armed security with high-cap magazines while they sit there and they try to limit the average citizen to 10 because they think that's reasonable in their opinion.
One last question, because we are running out of time. President Obama's making this a big issue. He's going to Minneapolis tomorrow.